Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today what we are going to be going over is in the lead up to the vice presidential nomination for the Democrats, when Joe Biden will announce his pick. Basically what we are going to be doing today is we are going to be looking at each individual pick and how they would help benefit Biden in the electoral landscape. Right now, this is the current map that I'm projecting if the election were to happen today. Joe Biden would win quite substantially with 334 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 204. But then again, this is just one scenario. There are many different scenarios that could occur, especially if polling was underestimating or overestimating a certain candidate. But looking into the first candidate, which is going to be Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, right now in the predicted odds, she is the #1 leading candidate by far. She what is the current senator from the state of California. She had a failed 2020 presidential run where she didn't even make it to the primaries, but she did actually lead in the overall polling after, I think, the first Democratic debate, especially after she destroyed Joe Biden. But all things said and done, that was about a year ago. They have somewhat made up, and she is definitely a social justice warrior, despite her being a attorney general for California and having a somewhat controversial past. Uh, so going into what states that she would improve in. First of all, I think she would definitely improve in the state of California, even though she would not necessarily need to in the first place. She would improve in the states like Georgia, South Carolina, I think Mississippi, Alabama, probably the state of Virginia and Maryland. They have quite decently high African American populations, and as Kamala Harris herself is black, she would likely appeal to those minority group voters who tend to vote in higher numbers, especially if they see a candidate looking like them being represented in such a high office. She would also do pretty well in North Carolina and Florida. So basically, the general South area she would benefit quite well in. However, I don't think that she would necessarily do so great in states like Arkansas or Tennessee, as they do have a decently high African American population. However, I generally see that if she would to be on the ticket, then she would actually help bring out white voters more, which sounds weird, but it actually probably might happen. I think she would also help in the states of Michigan. Michigan is a state that the Trump campaign has actually completely given up on, and because of that, and because of the Detroit metro area with a heavily African American population, she would also probably bring them out, especially in the state of Illinois with Chicago. Um, I also have a feeling that I completely skipped this state, but the state of Arizona. The state of Arizona would likely go more for Kamala Harris, as they do have a hefty minority population, which has been trending more towards the Democrats. Joe Biden does not necessarily provide a incentive for them to really get out and vote. Trump is actually doing better among Hispanics and black voters, but with Kamala Harris on the ticket, that might actually change. I also think that she would help improve in the states of DC and New Jersey as well. Yeah, so I'm just going to change the map back to how it originally was before Kamala was in the picture. Yeah, just let me fix this pretty quickly. And yes. Okay. Going into the next pick. Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren, in certain polling or generally who the Democratic base wants to represent them, it's going to be Elizabeth Warren. She has consistently led, not necessarily among people of color, but among general Democratic primary voters. She has definitely helped outperform the margins in these states. She is a more left-leaning politician compared to Joe Biden. She would maybe potentially bring out the Bernie wing that would not vote for Joe Biden otherwise, unless she would be on the ticket. However, her somewhat alienating herself from the Bernie base in the 2020 primaries, where she basically said that a woman could not win presidency, and accusing Bernie Sanders of sexism and stuff like that, may not necessarily bring his supporters over. However, she is a generally good candidate. Back in 2016, she was encouraged to run by many different people, including Bernie Sanders himself. He actually wanted her to run instead of himself, as he did not think he would necessarily be a viable candidate for, being president, and he thought she would, but she did not want to run in the end, so he did. But in many different polls, she has actually improved the margins in a significant amount of states. I have a feeling that she would improve in states that are typically Republican. I think she would improve in Alaska, the state of Missouri, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, maybe in the states of Iowa. She did win delegates in Iowa. I have a feeling she would also improve in Colorado, Nevada, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota. She would also improve in Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, state of Texas, which might seem a little weird since Texas does kind of tend to vote more moderate Democrats. However, I think that she would generally appeal to this type of working class, especially with Arizona and New Mexico. I think she would also help bring out the vote in Florida and Virginia. Along with her home state of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and probably Rhode Island and Connecticut, along with Maine's 1st Congressional District. I'm not too entirely sure about Maine's 2nd Congressional District, as they are more white working class voters, but it is definitely a more difficult thing to kind of pick. Especially in just this hypothetical kind of situation. So generally, she would help improve Biden's margins all across the area. She would also help in the entire Rust Belt. She is definitely a candidate to be reckoned with. She would really help boost Biden's ticket, even though she is not a woman of color, which might actually alienate some voters. As you can see, I did not necessarily improve her margins in most of the South. However, I think that for the rest of the nation, she would definitely help bring out turnout and boost the Biden ticket in ways that it likely would not have without her. Generally, thinking about her becoming vice president, I don't think that she would really stick up for the progressive policies that she's actually advocating for. She has kind of flip-flopped on Medicare for All. She has kind of let go of her policies that she really advocated for back in the primaries for 2020 and trying to become the president. And that in some way actually has kind of set her up in becoming a viable candidate for the vice presidential nomination. However, that might have also alienated a lot of voters in the process, as she might be perceived as someone who does not actually believe in what she is saying. Now, moving on to the next candidate, it is Susan Rice. This is actually, if you see my other video, she is the person that I think is most likely to be picked vice president, despite her not necessarily having huge name recognition and her not necessarily being from any particular swing state, or her having held elected office before. She definitely would be a viable pick. She was the UN ambassador under Obama. She also was a foreign policy advisor, I believe, to Barack Obama. She would definitely just continue on the Obama legacy in the White House, which Joe Biden has made it adamantly clear that that is what he wants. Looking into the states that she would improve, she would likely do somewhat similar to Kamala Harris. I think she would improve in Virginia, North Carolina, and potentially Georgia and South Carolina. I'm not too sure about Florida. I don't know if they would necessarily be turned off by her, or yeah. It's definitely a difficult call to make. In other states that I think she might do well in, she might do well in New Hampshire, and maybe in Maine overall. which might seem weird that I didn't give the full state of Maine to Elizabeth Warren, but I did to Susan Rice. Generally, I believe she was actually floated in running for Senate back over here, which is weird, but I might be confusing her with someone else. But I think that she would actually appeal to a majority of the voters in the state of Maine. I also think that she would appeal to voters in Montana. Montana is a state, again, with more moderate Democrats, and with having two kind of Barack Obama-like Democrats on the ticket, it would just help boost turnout a lot. And I also think she would help in the state of Iowa and the state of Wisconsin. I think those are the states that generally would vote more towards Biden if Susan Rice was on the ticket. She does have a lot of baggage. I can guarantee that if she were to become the nominee, the Republicans would basically launch onto her and constantly critique her handlings of Benghazi and other things as, her being a part of the Obama administration. They generally hate Obama, so the fact that she is so closely tied to them, which may be a blessing for her and trying to become the vice president, but it also may hurt her as her political career may not necessarily have a future with the amount of attacks and her vetting by the public. Okay, so now what we are going to go over is Senator Tammy Duckworth. She is currently the senator from Illinois. I believe it's the junior senator from Illinois. The senior senator is Dick Durbin. She was elected back in 2016 as an Army veteran. She lost both of her legs in combat. She's an Army combat veteran. I believe her helicopter got shot down during a mission, and it was definitely something that really did change her. If it weren't for the medical sciences and improvements in medical science in the Army, she would not have survived. So the fact that she really does have this inspiring story might actually help bring out a lot of formerly Republicans or Republicans on the edge between Trump and Biden. I have a feeling that her being so closely linked to such a to like the Army, and she would really bring out the veterans and people who support the veterans even more so. However, she is also from the Rust Belt, which would again boost Biden's chances in the Rust Belt, and she does tend to have more moderate policies. She is definitely in the past few weeks become a huge contender for being vice president, despite previously not being so. And looking at the states that she would improve in, she would definitely improve in her home state of Illinois. She would improve in the Rust Belt, I think, overall, including the state of Missouri and Ohio. I can see her doing better in Kansas as well, along with the state of Nevada and Alaska. She is a woman of color, but she is not a black woman of color, which may actually hurt her chances. But generally, these are kind of the areas that I believe that she would improve in. I don't think she would necessarily improve in the South by too much, but, it is what it is. So looking into the other states that I kind of think she would help in, I think she might actually just kind of improve the margins. I don't think necessarily any of these picks would help, improve a margin so much so that the Biden would flip the state. But generally, in a kind of time period where there is no convention bump, there is no actual in-person campaigning, and there likely will not be until the pandemic is over. It's going to be really difficult to try to pick a vice presidential pick. Okay, so going over our last and final candidate, it's underdog candidate Karen Bass. She is currently a representative from the state of California. She is a member of the Progressive Caucus and I believe the co-chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Her generally being on this list was kind of surprising, as No one really expected her to be on it, but she does have years and decades of legislative and congressional experience, which would really help bring a sense of dignity and respect, I guess, to the ticket, which they might think that sleepy Joe Biden might not have. And looking at the states that she would improve in, you do need to keep in mind that she is a black woman of color. She may not be necessarily a vocal person in fighting for, Black Lives Matter and a lot of the other issues that are kind of invigorating the protests all across the country. However, she would improve her home state of California along with the rest of the West Coast. She would also improve the state of Nevada and probably the state of California and Arizona. When it comes to the South, she would probably also help in winning Florida. She would help in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and I also think the state of Mississippi. The state of Mississippi is already going to be somewhat close, so the fact that she's going to be on the ticket is only going to help. She would also, I think, help in the state of Michigan. Again, the Detroit metro area would definitely help be brought out by her. Okay, so generally that is my 2020 vice presidential predictions and how they would actually impact the electoral landscape. Any of these VPs would have their own pros and cons. They would, even though they would have improvements in many states, they probably might actually lessen Biden's chances in other states. The vice presidential pick is going to be very significant this time around, especially considering that, trying to have, in-person gaps or trying to do all of these things is going to be very difficult, especially in a situation where you really shouldn't even be going outside. So, in this political climate, the fact of a vice presidential pick is going to be very crucial, and whoever Joe Biden picks is going to be monumental. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you agree with me or disagree with me with any of these predictions, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you liked the video. Please like it, subscribe, and thank you.